Hello, and welcome to TimeSplitters in Detail, the first episode of 2019, and what a better way to start than choosing a level set in 2019, the classic Neo Tokyo from TimeSplitters 2, one of my all-time favourite levels. I'd say this is arguably one of the most detailed levels in TimeSplitters, with moving vehicles, numerous NPCs, weather effects, animated lights and sounds spread throughout Neo Tokyo. It's also one of the more non-linear maps. Providing you aren't seen by the hacker or cameras, you're free to explore most of the level without enemies getting in your way. So, let's dive into this classic level from TimeSplitters 2. Neo Tokyo begins at the Maru station. There's a train here called the Skyway that zips by every so often. We can freeze the game and take a better look at the Skyway model itself. We can also take a look at the interior, which is very bare bones compared to the introduction movie. Like a lot of vehicles in TimeSplitters, once a Skyway reaches the end of its path, it simply teleports back to the starting location and repeats on loop. We can tell it's the same model repeating, as the windows are actually breakable here and remain broken as the Skyway re-enters. TimeSplitters has always been known for changing aspects of its levels depending on the difficulty you play on, and Neo Tokyo is no exception to this. When following the hacker during the start of the level, the path she takes will alter based on the difficulty chosen. When playing on easy, the hacker will take a slightly quicker route through the arcade, which also takes the player past weapons and ammunition. On normal mode, she'll take a slightly longer route, skipping the weapons on display and requiring the player to navigate more cameras. Not only is this route more difficult, but on normal and hard mode the player doesn't start with a silenced pistol. In order to get a weapon early on, you'll have to make a detour through the arcade. Hard mode follows the same route as normal, but the hacker is now cloaked, which means the player needs to use the temporal uplink to follow her movements. You can occasionally make out the outline of the character when she stops to look around. There are also more cameras along the route in hard mode. One of the more interesting vehicles features in Neo Tokyo, heavily inspired by the police spinner from Blade Runner. The Neo Tokyo police car is nearly an identical copy, but that's not surprising, as Neo Tokyo pulls a lot of material and ideas from that film, including the date the level is set in. We can take a good look at the vehicle here and all of its details. As expected, there's nothing inside the vehicle, though it looks way too cramped for someone to pilot it anyway. One thing I did notice, but it might just be me missing something or speculating, the police logo looks like it might have a sheep as part of its design. It's hard to tell with such a blurry texture, but if that's the case, then it's a big nod to Blade Runner once again. The Blade Runner theme continues with this vehicle, as the siren is also the same as the police spinner, as you can hear when we compare the clips. Once the police car completes its route, it will simply disappear, and a new vehicle will respawn in the original location. As you follow the hacker down the main street, another police car following a different path will appear. It will travel down the main street, then eventually fly upwards and out of the level. It seems the police cars spawn depending on the player's location. If you're in the main street, the second car will appear, and if you're closer to the arcade, the first one will spawn, as you can see here. An impressive detail of Neo Tokyo are the rain-soaked streets, which appear to have very convincing reflections of all the lights from the buildings. If we venture below the road, we can see that this effect is achieved by placing blurry objects underneath a translucent road surface. This is a common trick used in TimeSplitters and is used in many levels to simulate different reflections. Whilst it's pretty simple, it works really well in Neo Tokyo. Another area which shows off some in-game trickery can be found as you make your way to where the master is located. Some of the walls here have see-through textures and will render the player and other characters on the opposite side to give the illusion of a reflective surface. We can see what's going on by walking through the wall and meeting our doppelganger. Before we enter the sewers and the hacker's lair, we can take a good look at Neo Tokyo itself. There are lots of background buildings to give the sense you're in a large urban area here. I was always interested to see what the highways of Neo Tokyo looked like. Strangely, they seem to be choppy looking roads which don't look great for road travel. Not that this matters, as under normal circumstances the player would never be able to get here. One last thing I wanted to show before we move on was another Blade Runner reference you can see here with the street crossings.
Cross now. Cross now. Cross now.
Cross now. Cross now. Cross now. Cross now.
You may have noticed, once you followed Crayola to the hideout and obtained the password, you don't see her for the rest of the level. Once she enters the other room, her character simply disappears. If you're quick enough, it is possible to get her attention before she disappears. There's no mission failure if you kill her at this stage. Once inside the hacker's den, you can find some unique items. The first is a digital camera. It only features in Neo Tokyo on normal and hard modes. The game treats the camera as a weapon, and with some trickery we can even introduce it to arcade mode. Whilst we're playing around with arcade mode, we can also introduce the pedestrians of Neo Tokyo to a match. Though there are so many of them, they don't even fit on a full roster. We will come back to the pedestrians of Neo Tokyo later on. As you can see, the digital camera doesn't make for much of a deathmatch, but it's still pretty amusing to see the AI attempt to use it as a weapon. In multiplayer, whilst using the camera, it doesn't make any sounds. Another unique item that can be found here, once again only on normal or hard mode, is the Astro Lander cartridge for the temporal uplink. I'd say out of the three minigames, Astro Lander is by far my favourite, and I remember playing this one the most back in the day. One of the more interesting parts of this level is the time split machine seen here. It actually looks pretty painful for the time splitter trapped inside. On easy mode, the time splitter will spring to life as you enter the room. On normal and hard mode, you'll need to upload the camera evidence to the police server for the time splitter and the machine to become active. Doing this will also activate the ceiling guns, which aren't present on easy mode. You'll notice that the time splitter will only attack me and not other characters. Once you've deactivated the machine, the game once again changes based on the difficulty mode. On easy mode, you'll need to pursue the gang leader as she attempts to escape with the time crystal. She'll make her way to the level's exit point, though strangely it will drop the crystal. You can tell the game has simply killed her at this point. On normal and hard mode, the gang leader can be found inside the arcade and will spawn in the stairwell area. During this time, riot officers and gang members will spawn in and will engage each other in the streets, though they seem to always prefer targeting the player if possible. Upon leaving the hacker's lair, the master will spawn at the other side of the level and can heal the player if they've taken damage. It's in this area we can see some artwork unique to Neo Tokyo, including illustrations of the level's playable characters. With that out of the way, it's time to make our way towards the end of the level. Once the gang leader is defeated, the bridge blocking the exit will lower and 2 riot officers will instantly spawn in. This isn't the end for Neo Tokyo, however, as this level appears in challenge mode under the Escape from Neo Tokyo level in the Infiltration set. This version of the map is altered to prevent the player from escaping in a linear path intended for this challenge. We can freeze the in-game timer and use some tricks to explore the level properly. It's devoid of any props or characters, but it's still fun to explore the level under these conditions. Taking a look into the hacker's den, we can see there's no switches, cameras, or equipment in here at all. The last thing I'd like to look at is something I mentioned earlier, the Neo Tokyo pedestrians. There's around 20 characters made purely just for this level, and I'm not entirely convinced all of them get used. Still, we can view their stats and character models. You'll notice they don't have any character portraits either. So, with that covers everything in this episode of TimeSplitters in detail. If there's anything I've missed or would like to show later, I'll include it in a TimeSplitters extra video. For now, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.